Welcome everyone. We're going to go through an introduction to MongoDB. My name is Jesse Hall. I'm a senior developer advocate at MongoDB. You might also know me from YouTube as Code Stacker. So let's take a look at our agenda. We'll first look at some document database basics. We're going to create a free MongoDB Atlas cluster. Then we're going to load some data into our cluster, into our database from a JSON file. We're going to clone an e-commerce project, and then we're going to connect that app to MongoDB Atlas. So the first thing that we do need to understand is how data is structured in SQL or relational databases. You can think of these as spreadsheets. The data is stored in rows and columns. And so related data gets stored in separate tables to prevent data duplication, because when relational databases were first created, data was very expensive to store. And so we didn't want to duplicate any data. And in here, this is an example of a relational database. We have a users table and then a table of phone numbers that are related to a user using the user's ID. And so user 1 has 2 phone numbers and user 2 has 1 phone number. And so now when we want to query this data, we have to access both of these tables and join the data back together. And now a document database is fundamentally different. Document databases store data in documents. So JSON documents to be specific. If you're familiar with JavaScript, then you're going to be right at home because JSON is JavaScript object notation. And so these are stored in key value pairs, but it's very flexible. And the values that can be stored are many different data types like strings, numbers, booleans, arrays, and even nested objects. So we could store objects within objects or documents within documents. We can even store related data in the same document, eliminating the need for separate collections or tables. So here's the basic syntax for a document. We have our opening and closing curly braces, and then our key value pairs separated by a colon. Now this is the same data structure from our SQL or relational database example that we looked at earlier, and this is in JSON format. So we have our user's name, our user's phone numbers, and we see that both of these phone numbers are listed here in an array. And so the data, again, is structured differently than in a relational database. And so if there's one thing that you take away from this, it's this: data that is accessed together gets stored together. And so we have to think ahead, think of how our data is going to be accessed. If data is accessed at the same time, it should be stored together most likely. And that will result in faster queries. Now let's take a look at some terminology here, differences between relational databases and document databases like MongoDB. So in both relational and document databases, a database is a database. And in a relational database, we have a table, whereas in a document database like MongoDB, we have a collection. In a relational database, a row in MongoDB would be a document. And in a relational database, a column in MongoDB would be a field. So when I refer to collections, documents, fields, you know what I'm referring to. Now, how do we access data in MongoDB? So we have the MongoDB Query API. And in this, we can query and update data. We can quickly query and update documents in our collection with powerful operations like $update many and $set. We can index to optimize our queries with many different index types. For example, compound, multi-key, wildcard, geospatial, and more, no matter how deeply nested the fields. And we can transform and analyze our data. We can create highly sophisticated real-time analytics against live data in the same database cluster with no ETL or duplication. And we can use search. We can deploy advanced full-text search capabilities built into MongoDB. MongoDB has built-in Lucene-powered full-text search with no additional infrastructure to manage. We also have a graph, so we can use operators like graph lookup to quickly traverse connected data sets. We also have join and union. We can utilize the power of aggregation stages like $lookup and $union with to join and blend multiple collections for analytics and data exploration. So let's compare queries between SQL and the MongoDB Query API. So in SQL, we would have select star from people. So this is going to select everyone from the people table. In MongoDB, if you're familiar with JavaScript, This is going to look very easy to read. So we have DB, which is the database that we're connected to. .people is the people collection. And then we're going to find. And then we have empty curly braces, which indicates that we want to find everything. So if we take that a step further and we select star from people in SQL and then where age equals 25, in MongoDB, we would just put that into the find in an object. So we'd say age colon 25. So that's the same as saying the age equals 25. And then we could also do a greater than. So in SQL, select star from people where age is greater than 25. In MongoDB, we would add to that the $greater than operator. So that's $GT. And we would set that to 25. So that's going to find anyone with the age greater than 25. And so you can see here, the MongoDB query API is structured as objects, and it looks very much like JavaScript. So it's very easy to read. Now, we have many different client drivers. We have drivers for all of the C's, Go, Java, Node.js, Perl, PHP, Python, Ruby, Scala, Swift, Rust, and R. So it's more than likely that you're going to find a client driver for whatever language that your application is using. So that's it for the slides. Next, we're going to jump into the live demo, and we're going to see MongoDB in action. We're going to create a MongoDB database, load some sample data, clone a repo, and then connect our database to our application. All right, first off, we're going to go to MongoDB Atlas. Now, if you don't already have an Atlas account, you can sign up. Also, it's free forever to sign up. So in Atlas, we're going to build a new database. And now we have several options here. We have serverless, which is our pay-as-you-go option. This one will seamlessly scale up and down to meet the demands of your application. So if, for instance, you have a big demand, it will automatically scale up for you. If for some reason you don't use your database at all for an entire month, then it's not going to cost you anything. Our dedicated is for production applications. You get multi-region and multi-cloud options. And this is the standard for most production applications. But for today, we're going to use the shared database. This one is a no credit card required ever. It's completely free. It's great for learning and for very basic use cases. And so we're going to go ahead and create this cluster here. And first thing, we can choose our cloud provider. We can choose between AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure. And we can also select the region that's closest to us to make it a little bit faster. And so I'm just going to leave all of these defaults here and create my cluster. All right, so our M0 cluster is provisioning. While it's doing that, let's go through our quick start here. Now, by default, MongoDB is completely locked down. So even I can't access it yet. There are no users and there's no network access by default. So we need to create our first user. So I'm going to enter username of Mongo and the password of super secret Mongo. We can also auto-generate a secure password. Just make sure you copy it and put it somewhere safe. So let's create that user. And then we also need to add an IP address to our access list. Again, even though I have a user, I still can't access it because the network is locked down as well. So I'm going to add my current IP address and then finish and close. And let's go to our database. So we can see our cluster is still being created. While it's being created, let's go ahead and move over to our repo that we're going to use. All right, so in this repo, this is the Jumpstart series that we have on YouTube where we build out an e-commerce website. And we're going to use a branch from this repo for this introduction. And so we'll put a link to the repo as well in the chat so that you can check this out. But there's several branches in this repo, and we're going to go to the Compass branch. And in the Compass branch, there is a products.json file. And we're going to use this file to load some sample data into our database. So I have this file here, and we can see this is a JSON file. We have objects here with a bunch of products. So I'm going to go to raw, and then I'm going to right click and save as, and I'm going to save this on my computer. Now to load this data into our database, we're going to use Compass. Compass is the GUI for MongoDB. You can download and install it for your operating system. It will work on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And if I forgot to say this, it's completely free. Now to connect to Compass, we need to get our connection string. So let's go back to our database. And it looks like it's done provisioning. So now in our database, we're going to go to connect. and then connect using MongoDB Compass. And we need to get this connection string here. So I'm going to copy that. Now let's open up Compass, and we need to paste in our connection string in order to create a new connection. So I'm going to paste that in here. And the only thing that we need to change is our password. So it automatically put in my username, but I need to put in the password. Now we'll hit connect. And now we're connected. And let's go over to databases. And we can see there are a couple of default databases. You should never have to mess with these. We're going to create a new database. So up here in the top left, create database. And we're going to name the database store. And the collection name is going to be products. So again, this is an e-commerce site. So this would be appropriate names here, store and products. So let's create this database and collection. All right, so now we have our store database. Let's go to our products collection. And we can see that there's no data here. So let's import our data. So we need to select that file that we just saved. So I'm going to select that file and open. And this is a JSON file. We have a choice between JSON or CSV. Let's go ahead and import. And it's going to be really fast because there's only 16 products. And so now we have our products in our database. Now Compass is great for many other things. We can create aggregation pipelines here, schemas, explain plans, indexes, validation. There's so much more to Compass. There's even a built-in Mongo SH here, the shell, and so we can actually type out commands here as well. So there's a lot more to Compass for you to explore, but that's all we're going to use it for today. All right, so now let's go back to our repo, and we're going to clone this repo locally. So we'll go over here to code and copy this string here, and then let's go over to VS Code. All right, in VS Code, I can go over here to my source control, and because I'm logged in with GitHub, I can clone a repository straight from here. So I'm going to paste that repo URL here and hit enter. And then I'll select where I want to save it. It's going to clone it locally, and then I can open up the repo. Okay, so now remember that this repo has many different branches. So what I'm going to do is change to the quick demo branch. And you'll see this looks a lot different now that we're on the right branch. This is a Next.js application. Now, I don't expect you to know React or Next.js. We're going to look at how MongoDB is connecting and how it works. And it works the same in all the different frameworks. So first thing, let's take a look at our package.json, and we'll see our dependencies. We have React, React DOM, Next, and MongoDB. And we'll take a look at how MongoDB connects. But first off, let's go ahead and open up our terminal. Let's do an npm install and get all of our dependencies installed. All right, so while that is installing, let's take a look at our environment variable file. So now in order for MongoDB to connect, we need to give it a connection string just like we used in Compass. So in our .env.local.example file, we see we have a MongoDB URI here that we need to enter. Now, first of all, let's go ahead and change the name of this. This is going to be .env.local. And then we need to give it the URI. So again, back in Atlas, in our database, we're going to go to connect. And this time we're going to connect your application. We're going to select this connection string. Now back in VS Code, let's paste that in here. And again, we need to change our password. And so let's save this file. Now that we have our connection string in there, we should be able to run our application and see if it connects. Let's open up our terminal and we'll do npm run dev. And we should be able to open this up on localhost 3000 and see if it's working. All right, this should just take a few more seconds to run, to compile and load. And now, there we go. We have this data coming in, all these products. These are coming from our database. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So nice. We have our Mongo store and all of our different techware. Pretty cool. So let's take a look now and see how this is being pulled into our application. So let's go back into VS Code. And let's look at how this is laid out. So remember we had in our package.json, we have our MongoDB package. Let's go up to lib and then mongodb.js. And this is how we're connecting. We're using that MongoDB package to pull out our Mongo client. And then we're grabbing our MongoDB URI environment variable that we set up just a little bit ago. And so now if we don't have that URI, then it's going to throw an error and say, please add your URI to your env.local. And if we do have it, then it's going to create a new Mongo client, passing in our URI and some options. And then we're going to have our client promise, which is going to connect, and we're going to return then that client promise, which can be used in the rest of our application. So in about 32 lines of code, minus all of the comments that are in here as well, we're connecting to our database. And now the rest of our application can use this client promise. So now we're going to use that in our Next.js application. In Next.js, it's structured under pages, and then index.js is our main page. So let's go here, and we can see in here that we have our client promise that we're pulling from that lib MongoDB file. Now in Next.js, we have our home function here, which has an is connected and a products. So it's pulling that in from the server side. So Next.js, we can do full stack applications. And so because Next.js has this get server side props function, this is going to run on the server, and we are going to use that client promise here within this server side function. So we're going to get our client first. And then we're going to check to see if our client is connected. And then we're going to get our database. So we're going to say db equals client.db store. Remember, we called our database store. And then we're going to get our collection. So that's db.collection and then products. That was the name of our collection. And then we're going to get all of our products. So we're going to say products is going to await collection.find empty curly braces. So that's going to find everything. Now this returns to us a cursor. So we want to change that into an array. So we'll say to array. Now we have our array of products. Then we're going to return these to our Next.js client side. So in our props, we're going to pass in is connected. So we're going to tell the client side whether we're connected or not. And then we're going to also return our products. Normally this would just be products by itself, but because Next.js is a little strict, we need to sterilize our data. So we're going to JSON stringify our products and then JSON parse them again. And that just makes Next.js happy that we have sterilized data. Again, this is just a Next.js specific thing. So now, again, we have our is connected, our products being returned to our home component right here where they're being destructured. So now we can use these within our application. So we're using is connected right here. So we're saying if we're connected, return the rest of this. And so that is the rest of our application. And then products, we're using products down here where we're sending that to another component, a products component, where the products are then being rendered. And I'm not going to drill down into all of the different components, but that's the basics of how we're connecting and we're passing in our data and then displaying all of the data within our application. So let's see what else we can do here. So within our get server side props, again, right now we are returning all of our products. Let's say that we only want to return a specific category. Well, let's go back into Atlas. And within Atlas, we can browse our collection here. And so we have our store database and then our products. And we can see all of our data here within MongoDB Atlas online. And so let's see, we've got category of hoodie, category of sweater, mask, t-shirt. So let's pull in all of the hoodies. So category is hoodie. Let's go back into VS Code. And so right here within the curly braces, we could define our object that is going to specify the category of hoodie. So we just type that out. Category is going to be hoodies. So hoodie, just like that, we'll save that. Let's go back to our application now. We don't need to reload it or restart it, but we do need to refresh it. So let's refresh. And now we should just have our hoodies. We have two products here that are defined as in the category of hoodie. So that is the basic intro of how to create a MongoDB database, load some sample data, and connect it to your application.